Welcome, electric football coaches, to Scale Field Building Part Number 3. As a follow-up to Part 2 as promised, I'm going to give a brief outline of some of the possible troubleshooting remedies that might possibly assist you with your own field. Now, there's not too much that can and will present operating problems in an electric football field, but here are just a couple of them. Hotspots are basically where you have a certain area, usually a very small area on your field, where the vibration level is too high, causing your figures to fall over more often than not. To overcome this, we need to deaden the vibrations in this area. For metal fields, a thin magnet, like a fridge door magnet attached to the underside of the plane surface, can often deaden the vibration level enough to cool the hotspot. Also, for the thin magnetic material, I've also used this magnetic photo paper available at most dollar stores. For my PVC fields, I haven't found the hotspots to be much of a presented problem at all, but if it ever happened, I think probably using duct tape would probably dampen the vibrations. If you find you have numerous hotspots throughout your field, you should probably consider the culprit to be that your counterweights are too heavy and you need to reduce the weights of them. It is surprising how little the actual weight is required for counterweight to function as intended. With dead spots, you're getting little slowdowns or little movement in certain areas of your field. The first thing to check is ensure that all your motors are operating at peak efficiency. Especially with multiple motor fields, it's sometimes easy to miss that one motor is not operating properly. It can happen too that one particular motor is just a lemon. It doesn't put out the RPMs of the other ones, and the only remedy for that is to replace the motor itself. It can sometimes happen even with the brand new motors. Usually the prime suspect in causing a dead spot is the field levers themselves. If there's one in the immediate vicinity of your dead spot, thing to do is to back it off or lower it, in other words, if it's in one of the adjustable ones. If the leveler is not adjustable, then remove the felt cushion pad. If you're not using that, then just remove the leveler itself. You sometimes can get away with eliminating a leveler altogether, but you just have to recheck that your plane surface still remains level. If it's not, then you'll have to replace the leveler into perhaps another spot rather than its original location. For my newly constructed Bengals field, for improvements, I changed the counterweights. I downgraded them from 2.3 grams to about 1.6 grams. Just as a side note here, these digital weight scales that you see me using here can be had for about $10 off of eBay. Just make sure you get one that is capable of weighing 1/10 of a gram weight measurement. I also ended up replacing one motor. It just simply didn't work as well as some of the other ones, even though it was brand new. Before the advent of field covers, the early pioneers, scale field builders, had to paint their own on-field graphics. My first scale field that I built was done in this manner, and subsequently I did 4 more scale size fields, NFL fields, for the club and for myself using this method. In order to paint galvanized metal, you have to first prime it. I found the best primer to use is the automotive type primer, like a Duplicolour gray primer. Once your surface has been primed, you simply tape off a plane area, the green plane area, which is 60 inches by 26 and 5/8 inches, and use a high adhesive masking tape, and make sure you burnish down the edges to prevent the paint from bleeding under the tape. For the green paint, as far as brands go, I've used Krylon and Rust-Oleum. They seem to be very decent paints to use. Obviously, if you're going to be doing a two-tone field like I'm doing here, it's a lot more taping and masking off. The 1/2 inch yard per scale is easy to work with, fortunately. And obviously a single color field is a lot easier to do also. And once the main field color is painted, the next step is to paint your white yard lines in the 1 inch wide out of bounds area marker line. I happen to have an airbrush I can use for painting the yard lines, but a spray bomb will work almost as well. It just comes down to careful taping and measuring. For doing the field covers, I used a lettering stencil available at stationery stores. It can be used for spray painting the numbers onto field like I did with the Dolphins field and the CEFL field here. Another method I used for field numbers was cut out white decal material like I did on the Packers field here. Probably the biggest challenge, the most time consuming aspect of painting your own field is doing all the hash marks. There's about 360 individual hash marks on a typical football field. The method I choose to use for doing the hash marks was I got a hold of some white decal paper and I cut them out into 1/8 inch wide strips, half an inch long, and positioned them in place. For midfield logos and end zone graphics, I used a graphics program to make my own decals, and that program I'll reveal in the next section of the video. The final step to painting your own field is to give the field an overall clear coat. You need a non-yellowing crystal clear coat will be needed. Most brands of paint like Rust-Oleum and Krylon will have those type of clears in their paint lineup. I have also used a Tremclad clear gloss coat, and it seems to be compatible with most other brands of paint also. I'm not going to spend too much more further time explaining this painting method of field graphics. It's just a rather simple process. It basically only requires time and patience to execute. Painting your own scale field graphics does supply a certain satisfaction in saying you did the surface yourself and you truly say you built your scale electric football field from literally raw materials. Having said that, I think the vast majority of coaches these days are not going to paint their own fields, but rather they're going to use the method of our next subject, and that is utilizing field covers. For those of you unaware, a field cover is a thin vinyl material that has computer-generated graphics printed on it with utilizing special printers. The vinyl material has an adhesive backing for installation. No doubt you've seen vehicles driving about your town or city that have advertisements on their body panels. These vehicle decals are made of the similar, if not the exact same materials that we can utilize for our field covers. Now, being that these sticker vehicle decals can withstand the rigors of being outside continually, withstanding the sun's UV rays and rain, etc., it bodes rather well that it can be a very good candidate for our use as employed as a field cover for our electric football game board. Now, there are some very talented graphics artists within this hobby, so if you desire the best for your electric football field, and who wouldn't, then it would be probably worth your while to seek out these guys to get them to do a field cover for you. What we are going to be achieving here is basic field cover making 101. I don't consider myself to be a graphic artist by any means. I'm sort of in a grade school, grade 1 on that learning curve, while the before mentioned gentlemen have already graduated from college, so to speak. Having said that, now that the hands-on construction phase of our scale board building is completed, now let's have some fun and see what we can create with doing our own field cover designs. Now, we of course are going to require a graphic software program to give us the tools to create anything like a field cover design. Probably the best graphics programs out there are made by Adobe products. The pros more likely than not would utilize two of their programs for doing field covers. One of their choices would be Adobe Illustrator, and probably the main program they would be using was this Adobe Photoshop. Both these programs are subscription-based software. In other words, where you have to pay a monthly fee for its use. You can't outright buy the program. Even if you could, it'd be very pricey. If you want to get into serious graphic design work, you can't do much better than these two programs. You can do stuff way beyond simply doing field covers, of course. They do offer a free 30-day trial, so I took them up on their offer with the Photoshop. Unfortunately, I did the trial during the month of December when I was busy with Christmas, so I only had a few days to play around with it. But what I did do is come up with a grass texture to use in combination with this next program that's my mainstay program to do the field covers with. Inkscape is an open sourced software graphics program. Basically a group of intelligent and talented individuals got together in a community project and they created this program, this graphics program. It's available for anybody, and because it's open source, it's free, which I think should probably fit into everybody's budget. I've utilized Inkscape to make all my own decals for all my teams, and that'll be a how to do topic for a future Altoro tutorial. Now Inkscape is a continual work in progress program. In other words, it hasn't been perfected yet. It does have a few flaws and bugs in it. One of these faults is I found a printing problem while trying to do decals utilizing the 64-bit version of the Windows program. I won't go into details about it, but basically the 32-bit version I found I didn't have that same printing problem. So just for the feature's sake of time saving, when I do the decal making video, everything I will be doing will be shown as being rendered onto a 32-bit version of the Windows Inkscape program. As well, all the field cover templates that I'm going to be showing you are going to be done also on the 32-bit version. Once downloaded, this will be the opening screenshot that will greet you when you first open up Inkscape. To the left is a selection of tools that we'll be using to create and modify and manipulate images. We'll only be using a small portion of these tools for our purposes in this video, and I'll reveal them and explain them as we proceed along. And along the top is the pull down menus. Again, we'll only be using a small portion of these for making our field covers. Along the side are the shortcuts to a lot of the drop down menus and tool selections also. This rectangular shape on screen is the workspace area and or page outline border for if you desire to print off in your home printer. To change this, you click on File and then down to Document Properties. By default, the page sizing is A4, but you can change it to letter size, for example, and also change it from landscape to portrait. You can also manipulate this workspace sizing to any custom sizing you desire. You can also eliminate the page outline altogether, as we're going to be doing here right now. So let's open up one of the field cover templates that I created. I've made quite a few of these templates, and I'll make them available for everybody and anybody who wants to use them, as I'll explain as we go further along. The first tool function I'll show you is the zoom in and zoom out, and there's several ways of doing this. One of them is in the right hand corner of your screen. Another very useful zoom in tool is the magnifying glass. With this one you can zoom on a specific part of your work. And if you happen to have a wheel mouse, if you hold down the control key, you can zoom in with the wheel in and out, and it's a very handy, useful feature also. And finally, you can use the plus sign and the minus sign on your keyboard to zoom in and out. In the upper right hand corner is the layers window. You can think of layers as a series of color transparencies overlaid on top of each other. The order to arrange the layers in order to create the overall template is displayed here. The base layer was the Photoshop created grass texture. The second layer created was the hash marks, followed by the third layer, which was the field numbers. And for the final top layer, I added a graphics layer. This is where we're going to be adding on our on-field logos and the end zone lettering or whatever else we desire to put on our base template. You'll notice that each of the layers has a lock feature, and what these do when they're locked is they prevent you from moving the layers around, manipulating them in any way. It's probably best to leave these in a locked down feature while you're working on your template. The graphics layer you can leave unlocked for now, however. Okay, let's do our first field template example. First we'll open up a template here. Let's see, I'll pick number 19. For our first example, let's do something simple. We'll do a New Orleans Saints field cover. So first thing we're going to do is search for a logo for our center field. Doing a Google search reveals a whole host of New Orleans Saints logos that we can use for our center field. There are a couple of factors you want to keep in mind when you're looking for an image to put on a field cover. One is you want to have a high resolution. Higher the resolution, the better. And in the logos case here, you want to find an image with a clear background. The way you can tell that is with the checkerboard type background. This logo wouldn't be a good candidate because it has clipped edges. And this logo wouldn't be a good candidate because it has a white background. Now there are ways to remove backgrounds with the graphics program, but that just creates extra work that we don't need to be doing. Here's a Google listing of logos in descending resolution. And here's a real good candidate, high resolution with a clear background. I'll click on that. And then we're going to save it. Save it to a location that you can remember where it is. Now here's another poor candidate for our center field logo. While it has a clear background, it has a very low resolution, only 300 by 300. So it would be a poor choice to try and use for our center field logo. Let's back to our Inkscape work. We're going to import the images. First you want to do is click on the graphics layer, make sure it's open and unlocked. And then you go to import and go to where you downloaded your image. We're gonna, in this case, we're gonna download a few images here just to go over a few things. This default screen will pop up every time you import an image. Just to click on OK. Now with digital images, there are two main types of digital graphic files. One is referred to as bitmap or raster files, and the other is vector files. Now a raster file image is comprised of hundreds if not millions of tiny squares or of color referred to as pixels or dots. Your own digital camera, for instance, records raster images. They come in file types of like JPEG, PNG, GIF is just some of the many file formats available. Now with a vector image, the image itself is made up of a bunch of geometric shapes like points, lines, and curves to make up its image. Inkscape is a vector-based program, however it will handle the raster type images also. Now having access to both types of digital formats for images will work to our advantage in making our field covers, as you will witness as we progress with our field cover designs. To move an image around as well as to change its dimensions, we use the selection tool, which is at the top of the tools section. It's the default tool anyways when you click on an image, and with it you can change the dimensions of an image, distort it if you want, as you can see. Anytime you do something on Inkscape that you want to undo, you just right click and click on undo, as well as you can go to the top of the menu and click on undo as well. On the top menu there's a lock symbol, and this is for image size manipulation. When it's locked, this helps to ensure the image sizing keeps its same aspect ratio. In other words, when you increase or decrease the image size, the width and height of the image stays in the same proportion as the original image was. So it's a good idea to keep that lock in place while you're changing image sizing. The image dimensions of length and width are by default given in pixels, but you can change that within the options shown here, including changing it to inches or millimeters if you want. So here we're going to take a close look at our low resolution 300 by 300 image that we downloaded. And you can see the edges of the image aren't very sharp or well defined, so we're not going to be using that image for our center field logo. This next image is a high resolution 2000 by 2000. I've already decreased the size just to better fit the screen here, but as you can see, that's the image has much more clarity and sharpness to it. One of the downfalls of raster images is as you increase the size of an image from its original sizing, you'll lose its sharpness and clarity, and it becomes what we call pixelated. However, with this Pacific image, we're actually downsizing it, so in point of fact, we're increasing the image quality because we're compacting the pixels rather than expanding them. So obviously finding a high resolution image to use is the way to go. Our final image example is a vector graphic. Specifically, this file type is referred to as a scalable vector graphic, or SVG, and it's the main file type that Inkscape uses and recognizes. As I mentioned before, vector images are comprised of lines, curves, and points rather than pixels. But a big disadvantage to using an SVG image is it can be enlarged to any size and it will not lose any of its sharpness and clarity, as you can see here. A possible disadvantage to an SVG image is, versus a raster one is, depending on the image itself, sometimes the color will not be as vibrant as a pixel image would be. But as you can see, even in extreme magnification, the image stays very sharp and clear. Finding SVG images specific for our field cover designs on the web can be scarce, however. One site that you can sometimes find SVG logos is on Wikipedia. SVG images are not as common on the web, however we can use the much more plentiful raster images as I've shown you for our needs. I just thought it might be, if you find it interesting, to be shown the difference between the graphic types between raster and vector. So I think I'm going to go with the middle logo so we can get rid of these other two logos. You simple right click and then hit delete. So now we can center our image and we can downsize it to whatever size we desire. Well, it took me a while to explain it. As you can see, the process of finding an image, downloading it, importing it into your field cover, and then placing it in place and choosing the image size and location. It's all rather easy to do, and the beauty of it is you're the field cover designer, so you can choose the whole parameters of the image itself and where you want to put it and the sizing. So the first step to customizing our field cover is done with the center field logo. So now let's turn our attention to doing something with the graphics in the end zone. So let's add some text to our end zone. For that we're going to need the text tool, so we click on the A on the left hand tool column. So this is the font sizing, and these are the default sizes. However, one can manually enter any font size they desire, but right now we don't really need to concern ourselves with font size. Inkscape uses the built-in Windows font library or folder itself. Now obviously I've added to the default Windows font folder because they don't come with all these fonts. Unfortunately, I haven't found a website that has all the fonts for the Football Pacific teams at all. I will, however, provide some links to some of the fonts. You may have to do some legwork on your own to track them down. Downloading them to a font library is a pretty easy, simple process. And not every pro team seems to be available, but a lot of the teams use similar fonts. And this particular font library is going to come in handy when we come time to do our decals video. So let's type out some text for our end zone graphic. And we'll zoom in and change our positioning here so we can see it better what we're trying to attempt to do. Right now we're not going to concern ourselves with the font sizing. However, the font text is on a horizontal plane, so obviously we're going to have to change that for an end zone graphic. There's a couple ways of doing that. You can change the image either clockwise or counterclockwise on these two icons. And you can also click it on the menu. So in this case we're going to have to change it to counterclockwise. So that's a little better. So now we can play around with the manipulating both the text sizing and the positioning in the end zone. And because the font text is a vector graphic, changing the size of the text itself won't affect at all the clarity and sharpness of the image itself. You can make it as large or small as you want, and it'll be just as clear any size. Now the text looks okay so far, but I think we need to add something. Let's two-tone it with some official Saints gold. For this next step example, I'm going to direct you to another website. I'll leave the link below. There's several websites like this on the web. This is a particular one I used lately. Every computer-generated color has a hex code to it. And as you can see on this site, all the pro teams are listed with their official hex code team colors. And needless to say, this will especially come in handy when it comes time to do team decals. So we find the gold for the New Orleans Saints, and we'll do a copy of the hex code number. Okay, back to our field cover. First thing you want to do is select your text, then click on the above menu onto Object, and then down to Fill and Stroke, and a right-hand window pops up. And you want to click on Stroke Paint, and follow that by clicking on the flat color box. The window will now change, and in the RGBA box, here's where you want to paste your color hex code that you copied previously. And do maintain the double FF suffix as part of the code as well. Now take your mouse pointer and go up to the stroke style tab, click on that. And in the width box that you see there, you can change the thickness and depth of the outline of the gold, in this case to our text. And you do it by clicking on the up arrow to increase and the down arrow to decrease. Here we'll take a closer in view to our text to see exactly what we're accomplishing here. As you see displayed here, you can vary the thickness of your outline of your text to your own custom taste. We will be revisiting this window particular feature of the Inkscape program a lot when we come time to do our decal video. I'd say our Saints Endzone font looks pretty good. Again, the size of the font, the depth of the outline, in this instance would be all up to you. Customization is the word here. Okay, so how do we go about determining if our text is centered properly on the field itself? Well, the human eye is a pretty good measuring tool, not to be underestimated. So here's a quick and accurate method to centering our Endzone text. We select our text, but this time we double click with your mouse button. And what will appear is this crosshair. What this represents is the exact center of our Saints lettering. There's also a pivot point. You could now pivot the image 360 degrees if you want from that pivot point. Not really useful for our purposes right now. Let us zoom back in on the crosshair, and what we want to do is line up the crosshair with a midpoint on the 2-yard marker line. If you want to be more accurate, you can go to the overhead scale here, click and hold your left mouse button, and you will drag down the guide marker line. As you can see, both the crosshair and the marker line are very fine, kind of hard to see there, and doesn't help that it's on a black background. Actually, I think I'll temporarily change the lettering to a lighter color, so hopefully you can better see what we're trying to achieve here. So we line them up, and we can see that we're slightly off center here. A quick tip here is to move an image by minute amounts on a 180 degree flat plane, whether it's horizontal or vertical. You can use the directional arrow keys on your keyboard. So after a few quick taps of the arrow key, reline up our guideline marker, and it shows our text is on now true center. So we can change the Saints lettering back to black, and then we can drag the marker line back up to the scale if you want to make it disappear, or you can also click on it and hit delete. Another couple of quick tips. If you want to know what the actual dimensions of your image is, when it's printed out that is, the overall dimensions of your currently selected image are displayed here. The default setting is on pixels. To change that to the other units, you can do that here. Actually, let's change the default setting. It won't take a moment here. First you click on File and you go down to Document Properties, click on that. Then in this window you simply change the measurement type that you want. And once you close the window, you can see that our default setting is now 2 inches, so you won't have to be changing it constantly. Anyways, now that our first Endzone graphic is complete, obviously we need to duplicate this for our opposing Endzone. So that's exactly what we're going to do now. Select your text, right click on your mouse and select duplicate. So we'll shuffle our duplicated text down into the opposing Endzone. And obviously now we're going to have to flip our text 180 degrees for proper orientation. A couple of clicks on our rotate selection button, either counterclockwise or clockwise, doesn't really matter, give us the results that we need. So to center our newly installed Endzone graphic, we just need to do the same process that we did in the other Endzone. Another tip. Now I often find the guide marker line to be so fine it's often hard to see, at least for my old 4 eyes. So often I will use the rectangular box tool there and make my own guideline, so you can make it any length and any thickness you want. And I find it's usually a lot easier to see and use. So our first field cover template example is pretty much done. Having said that, looking at the overall picture, I think I want to make that center logo a little bit bigger. So let's do that. So of course we want to make sure our logo is centered again at the size that we want. I suppose too we probably could have used the dark Saints logo. That probably would have been more appropriate for this particular field cover, but you get the picture. You can do whatever you want. And there we go. We got our first example of our field cover done. Rather simple one. So I think maybe we'll go on to do another example, and this time we'll try something a little more elaborate. There is one rather important item that I should have mentioned earlier, and that is saving your work. To save, go to File, then click down on to Save As, and then enter whatever file name you want to put it under. And you really should make it a point of saving your work as you progress through working on your field cover. Inkscape can and will crash on you, and it does not have an automatic save points either, so if you do not save your work and you end up losing it, well, you're going to have to start all over, and you're not going to be a very happy coach. So let us go open up another field cover project. Another nice feature of Inkscape is you can load up a recent work by opening up this feature window. Instead of having to go search for where your file is, it should be displayed here. I think before we go to our second field cover example, I'm going to load up a work in progress field cover here, and I'm going to show you a few more tips that we can go over. This is a college field cover of the Kalamazoo Hornets. I think they're a Division III school. Anyways, here's a few handy items. Here you can import pictures of the actual field as you're building your field cover. It's a pretty handy reference to have nearby, right on the same screen. I don't think I really intend to ever get this field cover printed out, but I just did this for demonstration purposes, and also I kind of thought their logo at center field, the Hornet, is pretty neat. Here I managed to find an example of their end zone lettering. Sometimes with these Division III schools, it's pretty hard to find any information versus, let's say, a Division I school. What I've done here is printed out the end zone name, and I'm going to show you here how we can go through our font library to track down a similar looking font to our letter. Oh, there we go. We just crashed on screen. Look at that. Inkscape, like any other graphics type program, can be rather taxing on your system sometimes, and the program itself is a work in progress. They're at version 0.91 right now, and hopefully when they develop the 1.0 version, things like this will be happenings of the past. Anyways, getting back to the screen here on our second try, what I did here is I selected the Kalamazoo printing and went to my font library, and then using the down arrow key on my keyboard, I'm cycling through all the available fonts that I got in that library. I've probably added, I don't know, 50 to 75 additional fonts to the Windows default font library. And even at that, sometimes you don't find a match with your font that you want, and you have to go searching for it via the internet. And there's literally thousands of different fonts out there. Some of these I probably should delete, like this one here I don't think I'll have any use for. As you see, just changing the font style changes the font sizing. That's not really an issue because with the selection transform tool that we use, we can change the font to whatever size we want. And I believe this is the final font I decided on. In this particular field, the end zones looks like they're based in black. And because of the fact that I utilized a Photoshop to make the grass texture, and I no longer have access to that particular program, I can't simply change the grass color. As a solution, I created a black rectangular shape matching the end zone area, and then I made it semi-transparent by changing the opacity of the black itself. Within the fill and stroke window, you can see by manipulating the slider, we can alter the opacity of any selected image or object, and you can also manually enter a value from 1 to 100 in the small window as well. So taking the shaded rectangle we've created, we can move it into position, and when we zoom in, you can see the overall effect is black with the grass texture still evident. Now you could also make it simply just a solid black if you want. That's an option too. You may also note even at a zoom level of 460%, you can see how sharp the vector-based lettering is. So there's another field cover design completed. We will save it for the final time. And you'll get this window popping up asking if you desire to replace your last save with this particular one. And we will indeed do that. Next, I think I will do my final example of doing a field cover design. What I'm going to be doing here is hopefully show you a few more additional ways and means of doing some different procedures and getting some different unique results. Okay, so let's go open up our template folder and make another template selection. Yes, as you can see, I've made several templates. About 80% of these are made of the same grass texture you've seen already. However, each one is a different shade of green or greens, because there's a few two-tones in there as well. I'm going to attempt to try and make these available over the internet for anybody's usage. I'm not certain how I'm going to go about doing that right at the moment, so I'll have to do some further investigation about a file sharing application of some type, Dropbox. I've never used it, so I'll have to do some checking into that. Now this particular template, as you can see, is a solid colored one. There's no grass texture to it. As I mentioned before, Inkscape doesn't have the capabilities of doing grass texture. I made this particular template all within Inkscape. Here I'm opening up the layers window so I can access the layers, and I'm going to be closing down the graphics layer and going down and opening up the basic grass layer so I can access the grass layer itself. Now I'm going to select the green field itself, and then I'm going to go down to the very bottom right hand corner of our workspace. And this is where the color palette section of the built-in colors for the Inkscape program are located. And as you can see, there's going to be quite a few selections here available for our usage. And also along the bottom there's a slider too that you can slide these colors, revealing some even more selections. It's a little hard to see on screen, but each of these colors is a little square, and each of these colors also has its own hex code. So we're going to go to the green here. Here's the neat part. You can click on any one of these little squares and it automatically changes the color of our field, just like that. Pretty neat, eh? Well, that's a really dark green, almost bordering on the black. And that's really black. And of course you can go for, blinding colors like that. And of course it doesn't have to be green, it can be any shade that you so choose. Ooh, I think if you choose that color, you're going to have to turn in your man card. But you sort of get the idea here. It's kind of a neat thing. If you want to customize your own field cover, basically, you can make it any shade you want. That's pretty blinding and that's pretty pukey, but as I say, if you maybe got a custom idea, maybe you want to make an all black field, you know, Oakland Raiders type of thing, you got the option. So I think I'll stop with the color switching here before I go blind. And what I'm going to attempt next is going to be this particular field, Boise State Broncos. Now, living up here in Canada, I'm not a super big college football fan, but certainly have a new appreciation for the college game. And after watching a lot of the Fat 8 YouTube videos, it kind of made me a fan of U.S. college football. So for our field color, instead of trying to match up colors or guess at what the color is, we're going to go to this site, which has the hex code colors for most of the college football teams. And we're going to go down to Boise State Broncos here, and there's their blue or orange, and we're going to copy that color. So we head on back to our work, and then we open up the familiar fill-in stroke window. We go to the RGBA window, paste our color in there, Oh, we forgot the double FF suffix. That's better. For our next step, we're going to create the orange end zone segment of our field. For that, we're going to use our trusty rectangular making tool. Well, we have the opacity set less than 100% from the last time we used it, so we're going to have to change that since we're not using a field with any grass texture to it. There we go. Now we go up to the dimensions and change it to inches, and then we're going to make the end zone 5 inches wide, and we're going to make it 26.625 inches long. That's the decimal equivalent of 26 5/8 inches. There we go. So it's back to our handy dandy website here, and we can get the hex code color for the orange. Back to Inkscape, where we paste the hex code color into our box again. Oh, there goes the FF again. There we go. That looks like the proper orange. Of course, we're dealing with colors here that are on a monitor versus colors that are on from a picture, so sometimes it's hard to figure if we got the exact copy, but I think we're pretty close. So we'll move our first end zone orange into place here. You can zoom in, of course, to make exact fit here. Then we'll do a duplicate and go to the other end of the field and put that end zone in place. Well, now we've got our basic colors in place for the field itself. So the next thing to do, I guess, would be install the on-field graphics, and I guess we'll start with the center field logo. Okay, I think at this point I'm going to conclude this as part 3. I apologize. I fully intended to cover the complete field cover creation in this whole video, but I see we're well past 40 minutes already, and if you've lasted this long, I really thank you. And well, I guess we move on to part 4, and at that time we'll complete the Boise State Bronco field cover. Then we'll get into where you can get your field cover from, and a few other items I intended to cover. Otherwise, this video would have been probably well past 60 minutes. So anyways, I look forward to seeing you again in part 4, and until then, keep cracking the plastic.